All right, so welcome to another deep dive, and today we are going way back in time,
Way back.
like way back to ancient Iran, around 5,000 years ago,
Wow.
to a place called Shahr-i Sokhta.
Oh, okay. I've heard of this.
Have you heard of this?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, it's like stepping into a time machine because archaeologists found something incredible there.
Hmm.
A complete board game set from like 2600 to 2400 BCE.
Wow, a board game.
A board game.
Like what kind of board game?
Well, and that's the thing, right? It's not just any game. This isn't like
Yeah.
some ancient version of checkers.
Right.
We're talking intricate details,
Oh, wow.
variety of pieces, multiple dice.
So they found like the whole set.
They found the whole set. We've got the board itself, beautifully crafted from wood.
Nice.
27 pieces made of both wood and stone.
Oh, interesting.
Which already makes you think, right? Like, what's the significance of some being wood and some being stone?
Definitely. Yeah.
And we even have multiple types of dice.
Wow.
But here's the catch.
What's that?
No rule book.
Oh, no.
Can you imagine, like,
Yeah.
finding a brand new game today, but the instructions are just gone?
Talk about a challenge.
Talk about a challenge, right?
Yeah.
So how do we even begin to figure out how this game was played?
That's where the real detective work comes in.
Right.
We've got these amazing researchers, Sam Jelva and Hossein Moradi,
Yes.
and they've been studying this game using what we know about other ancient games along with like game theory
Oh, wow.
to try to piece together how this 5,000-year-old game might have been played.
I love that. So, like, they're putting together this 5,000-year-old puzzle.
It is a puzzle. Yeah.
Let's start with the board itself.
Okay.
What makes this game board so special?
Well, right away, the board itself is rectangular with this winding path.
Okay.
And that, I mean, right away, that reminds me of the royal game of
Oh, yeah.
which was super popular in ancient Mesopotamia.
Okay.
And that similarity between the boards, I think, suggests that there was some really interesting cultural connections between these ancient civilizations.
So people were already sharing game ideas across, like, vast distances thousands of years ago.
Yeah, it seems so, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
But there's more to this board, right? It's not just a copycat.
Oh, right, yeah.
There's something that sets it apart from the game.
You're talking about the serpent?
The serpent, yes.
Yeah, the one biting its tail right there on the board.
Right on the board. I mean, what's that all about?
Well, that serpent imagery, I mean, that was super powerful in ancient Iran.
Oh,
Like when you think of a serpent back then, you think about water, fertility, cycles of life and death, the underworld.
wow. So it's like more than just decoration.
Yeah.
It's like they wove their beliefs right into the game.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder if it was just symbolic or did that imagery actually influence gameplay?
I mean, it's one of the big mysteries, right?
Cool.
Okay. Well, let's move on to the game pieces.
All right.
27 pieces sounds like a lot to keep track of.
It is a lot, and they're not all the same either. We've got triangles, we've got jagged triangles, which are kind of cool.
Jagged triangles?
Yeah.
I've never heard of a jagged triangle in a game before.
And then there's stepped crosses, cones, and even quadrangular shapes.
Okay. Wow, that's a very diverse set of pieces.
Yeah, it is a very diverse set.
So it's not just the shapes that are different.
Right.
I was reading that the researchers think that these pieces weren't divided by color, like we see in a lot of games today.
Yeah, it seems like instead of like red versus blue,
Right.
it was shapes.
Shapes.
So each player might have had a set of triangles or cones or whatever.
Huh.
So it wasn't about the color, it was about the shape of the piece.
That is fascinating. It makes you think about strategy in a totally different way.
For sure.
It's like each player has their own unique toolkit.
Yeah, exactly. Like a unique toolkit for navigating the board.
Okay, so let's break down these different shapes a little bit
Okay, yeah.
and what they might have meant in the game, because I'm assuming that each shape had a different functional role. Right?
Most likely, yeah.
Okay, so let's start with the triangles.
Okay, so the triangles I think are probably the most straightforward.
Okay.
They probably function kind of like pawns in chess.
Yeah.
So they move along the path based on dice rolls.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
What about those jagged triangles?
Those are interesting because we don't see them in other ancient games.
Hmm.
So figuring out their role, that's a real challenge for researchers.
Yeah, that's a head scratcher.
And then there are the stepped crosses.
Ooh, those are the ones that really caught my eye.
They almost look like symbols you'd see in ancient art.
Exactly.
And some researchers believe that those crosses might have functioned almost like symbols within the game, too.
Well,
Like, remember we talked about the serpent and the underworld? Well, maybe these stepped crosses, maybe they were seen as safe havens,
okay.
places of protection on the board, maybe even linked to that idea of the serpent's realm.
Wow. So it's not just about moving your pieces across the board.
Mhm.
It's about navigating this world
Right.
with safe spaces and maybe even a little bit of ancient magic, right?
Exactly. And then you've got the cones and those quadrangular pieces, and those were probably a bit different.
Different from the runner pieces.
Yeah, and different from those safe havens.
So what did those pieces do?
Well, think about a game, right?
Okay.
You've got pieces moving towards a goal, but what if you could disrupt your opponent's progress?
Ooh, so like blocker pieces.
Blocker pieces,
Oh,
exactly.
oh, that's a good twist.
So the cones and those quadrangular shapes could have been used to hinder your opponent, block their path, add another layer of strategy.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So out of all these pieces, only 2 cones are made of stone.
That's right. And there's a subtle difference in their shapes, too. Like one's slightly more elliptical and shorter than the other.
That's a great point. Do you think maybe each player had their own unique stone cone, like their own special power or something?
It's definitely possible. And when you think about the symbolism of those shapes,
Right.
like cones, they point upwards, right? So maybe they represent like mountains or the sky.
Okay.
And the quadrangular pieces, with that four-sided structure, maybe they symbolize the earth.
Hmm. Okay. Now I'm really seeing how much thought went into the design of this game.
Oh, absolutely.
Like it wasn't just about moving pieces around. It was about embodying these ancient symbols,
Yeah.
these forces of nature, and using them to outwit your opponent.
Yeah, it's a really cool blend of strategy and symbolism and culture all wrapped up into one.
But wait, we haven't talked about the dice yet.
We haven't talked about the dice.
And if this game wasn't intriguing enough already, the dice add a whole nother layer of complexity.
Oh, yeah.
So tell me about the dice. What were they like?
So they found a few different types of dice.
Okay.
2 of them were fairly standard, with the circular patterns for the numbers.
Right.
But the third type, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm ready.
Instead of numbers, this die had geometric shapes on it.
Wait, geometric shapes on a die? How would you even use that in a game?
That's the question.
Yeah.
And it really has stumped researchers.
Right.
But it does suggest that there's this deeper level of complexity to this game,
Right.
like a visual language woven into how you play.
So instead of just rolling and counting spaces, you had to interpret these shapes.
Exactly.
Do you think maybe the shapes on the dice corresponded to the shapes of the pieces?
That's a great theory.
Like you'd have to roll a matching shape to move a certain piece.
Yeah, and it would totally change the strategy. You
Mhm.
wouldn't just be reacting to whatever you rolled. You'd have to try and anticipate what shapes you might get and plan your moves accordingly.
Oh, wow. So it's like they were playing 5,000 years ago with mechanics that we're only just now starting to explore in modern board games.
I know. It's amazing, isn't it?
This is blowing my mind. I'm completely captivated by this game already, and we've only just scratched the surface.
I know, right?
But I am dying to know more about those dice.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have to dive deeper into those dice and what secrets they might hold in the next part of our deep dive. All right, so let's get back to those geometric dice, because I think they really are the key to understanding how this game worked on a deeper level.
I am all ears. I can't wait to hear more about how those shapes might have influenced the gameplay.
Well, remember we were talking about those stepped crosses, those potential safe havens that might be connected to the serpent's realm?
Yeah, they were so fascinating.
What if those shapes on the dice, what if they actually determined where those stepped crosses were placed on the board?
Oh, you mean the safe havens weren't fixed in one spot?
Right, exactly.
They could move around.
Yeah, and we actually see evidence for this kind of thing in other ancient games where these safe spots or lucky spots, they weren't always in the same place every time you played.
Wow, so it wasn't just about landing on a specific spot.
Yeah.
You had to roll the right shape to even create that safe haven in the first place.
Exactly. And think about how that would change the game. Like, every game would be unique, unpredictable.
That's amazing.
And there's another layer of strategy there, too.
Right.
Because you wouldn't just be trying to reach a fixed goal, you'd be shaping the game board itself as you played.
Oh, that's so cool.
All right, now let's think about those blocker pieces for a minute. Those cones and quadrangular shapes.
Okay.
What if the geometric dice also played a role in where those were placed on the board too?
Okay, so instead of just placing them wherever you wanted,
Yeah.
you had to roll a specific shape to activate them,
Exactly.
to unleash their powers.
Yeah, like imagine you roll a shape that corresponds to a cone.
Right.
And then, boom, you can put that cone down strategically to block your opponent.
That's really cool.
So it wouldn't just be about blocking, it'd be about using those shapes, those forces of nature, to disrupt your opponent's strategy.
It's like you're wielding the power of the mountains or the earth itself to thwart your opponent.
Exactly. And it adds like a whole other level of depth and meaning to this game. But let's go back to those stepped crosses for a second.
Okay. We've been talking about them as safe havens, places of protection, maybe even connected to that serpent's realm.
Right.
But what if they were even more than that?
Oh, cool.
What if landing on a stepped cross wasn't just about safety, but about getting some kind of special ability or advantage?
Like what?
Well, maybe landing on a stepped cross lets you move your other pieces in a special way.
Okay.
Or maybe it gives you like a bonus roll of the dice.
Oh, I like that. A bonus roll.
Or maybe you can even use it to like temporarily neutralize one of your opponent's blocker pieces.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Right. So there are a lot of possibilities, and it shows just how much we still don't know about how this game was played.
Yeah, that's true. It really makes you think.
It does, but, we've been focusing so much on those geometric dice.
Right.
We haven't really talked in detail about how those circular dice, the ones with the number patterns, how those might have worked.
Oh, that's a good point.
So those circular dice, those probably just determine how many spaces you could move your pieces.
Okay, that makes sense. It's a pretty standard mechanic in a lot of ancient games.
Yeah, pretty straightforward.
So if we try and put it all together.
Yeah, let's do it.
You've got those runner pieces, probably the triangles and those jagged triangles, moving along the path based on what you roll on those circular dice.
Okay.
Then you've got your stepped crosses, which might be safe havens, or maybe they give you special abilities.
Right.
And then you've got those blocker pieces, the cones, and the quadrangular shapes that you can use to disrupt your opponent.
And don't forget,
Yeah.
the placement of those step crosses and those blocker pieces might be determined by those geometric dice too.
That's right. So it's like a very dynamic game.
Right. It's not just rolling and moving. It's like shaping the board itself.
Yeah, and thinking strategically about where to place these key elements and how to outmaneuver your opponent.
This is so cool. I can't believe how much depth there is to this ancient game.
I know. And we can't forget about that serpent either.
Right. I was just thinking about that. We know it was a powerful symbol.
Huge symbol in ancient Iran.
But how did it connect to the actual gameplay? Was it just there for decoration, or did it have a more active role?
That is the big question.
Yeah.
And we were talking earlier about how the serpent was associated with cycles of life and death in the underworld.
Right.
What if that represented like the final challenge in the game?
Like a final boss you have to defeat to win.
Yeah. Or maybe not defeat it, but maybe confront it in some way. Like
Sure.
maybe you have to land on a specific spot that's near the serpent's head.
Okay.
Or maybe you have to roll a certain combination of shapes and numbers on the dice.
That would be so dramatic.
Right.
All right.
Can you imagine the tension as you get closer and closer to that serpent?
Oh, that would be amazing.
And it would make sense, too, given how important the serpent was symbolically.
Right.
And it would tie in nicely with that idea of those stepped crosses being like portals to the serpent's realm.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. We have strategy and symbolism and ancient beliefs all wrapped up in this one game.
I know, it's amazing.
It's incredible. It really speaks to the ingenuity of the people who designed it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They were clearly very creative and thoughtful, and they put so much care into how they crafted this game.
Yeah, and we've only scratched the surface.
I know. There's still so much we don't know about this game.
It's a true mystery.
Yeah, it's a puzzle that we're still piecing together.
I love it.
And every new discovery just brings us a little bit closer to understanding how this game was played and what it meant to the people who created it.
This is why I love doing these deep dives. We start with a simple question like, how is this game played?
Yeah.
And we end up uncovering all of these layers of meaning and complexity.
Exactly. It's like peeling back the layers of history.
Right.
And you never know what you're going to find.
And it reminds us that the past is full of surprises.
It is.
And that even something as simple as a game
Right.
can be this window into a whole other world.
It really can.
So I'm eager to keep exploring this world with you. But I think for now, we need to take a step back and think about the bigger picture. Okay, what does the discovery of this game in Shahr-i Sokhta tell us about the ancient world beyond just this one game?
Right.
Like, how does it fit into the broader context of ancient games and the spread of ideas and culture?
That's a fantastic question, and it's one that we'll tackle in the final part of our deep dive, so stay tuned.
So we've spent this whole deep dive unpacking this 5,000-year-old game from Shahr-i Sokhta.
Yeah.
The unique pieces, those puzzling dice, the symbolism of that serpent.
Right.
But now I'm thinking about the bigger picture. Like, what does this discovery tell us about the ancient world beyond just this one game?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And, I think the key is to really look at those similarities between the Shahr-i Sokhta game
Okay.
and the royal game of Ur, the one from Mesopotamia.
Right, right. We talked about those similar game boards and how they suggest some kind of connection, but what does that connection really mean?
Well, I think it points to this really important idea of the transmission of ideas and culture, even across vast distances thousands of years ago. Like, these games weren't just isolated creations, they were part of this network of exchange, a flow of knowledge and traditions that linked different civilizations.
It's like those games were these cultural ambassadors traveling from one place to another and
Exactly.
carrying those shared traditions with them.
Yeah, like think about the Silk Road.
The Silk Road, yeah.
All those goods and ideas moving back and forth across continents,
Right, yeah.
and games were part of that flow too.
So it wasn't just about, trade goods. It was
No.
about these ideas and cultural practices.
Absolutely. They weren't just diversions or pastimes.
Right.
They were carriers of culture, belief systems, ways of thinking.
So when we study these games, we're not just learning about, like, the rules and how to play.
Right.
We're getting a glimpse into the minds of the people who actually played these games.
Exactly. And it's fascinating how often these ancient games actually integrate these really deep concepts like beliefs about the universe and humanity's place in it.
Like we saw in the Shahr-i Sokhta game, those stepped crosses, possibly being portals to the serpent's realm.
Right. It wasn't just about playing for fun or passing the time.
Yeah.
They were connecting with something larger than themselves, something spiritual.
Makes you wonder if we've kind of lost some of that deeper meaning in games today.
It's an interesting question. I mean, it seems like a lot of games today are designed more for just entertainment and escapism.
Right. Yeah, but maybe not entirely, right?
Yeah.
Like, think about those complex story-driven video games that are out there.
Yeah.
I mean, they often explore those big themes, good versus evil, love and loss, the search for meaning, the same themes that have resonated with humans for centuries.
That's a good point. And there's also this growing movement towards games that are designed to promote mindfulness,
Okay.
relaxation, even spiritual growth.
So maybe that ancient impulse, that desire to connect with something bigger through games, is still there, just
Yeah.
expressed in different ways.
I think so. And maybe the Shahr-i Sokhta game can kind of serve as a reminder of that.
A reminder.
Yeah, like games can be more than just entertainment. They can be powerful tools for exploration, connection, understanding.
That's beautifully said. Wow.
Thank you.
This has been an incredible journey. We started with this one mysterious board game,
I go.
and we ended up exploring connections between civilizations, the evolution of games, even this, like, enduring human desire to find meaning and purpose through play.
It's amazing what you can learn from game, isn't it?
It really is.
And who knows what other secrets are still out there
Yeah.
waiting to be uncovered. I mean, the Shahr-i Sokhta game, that's just one piece of this much larger puzzle.
Right.
And every time we find a new piece, our understanding of the ancient world, it just becomes richer and more complex.
Well, I, for one, am excited to see what other pieces of that puzzle we uncover in the future. But for now, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this incredible adventure. And remember, keep playing, keep exploring, and keep asking those big questions.